There we go. Good morning and happy spring, everybody. And if you're watching this live, we are going to be in the minute of the spring equinox while we are live. I think it's around 11:35 this morning Eastern time. So welcome to spring. We are going to do our weekly tarot forecast update, and we're also going to talk about a meditation card. So I'll pull a meditation card for the week, and we also have our angel cards, our Native American cards. So we draw in a few little different divination tools to give us basically a an outlook for the week. Maybe not as much about around the current events or what's going on in the outside world, but more of how that's affecting us in our day-to-day lives, this community and people who are watching this either live or as a video. So we're going to get into this in just a minute. I'd like to give the live people just a couple minutes to come in. So let me just say a couple of hellos. So see Susan, Doreen, Yvonne, Sharon, Lisa, Linda, um, Manic, Teresa, right? I forgot your name. And Sharita is in. Awesome. So, so good morning and happy spring, everybody. And yeah, people tend to start to come in slowly. So this has definitely been a very interesting time of a lot of changes. The main thing and the message that I really want to put out there this morning or put out there today, or which is basically what my message tends to be, is really we have to focus on what we do have some measure of control over rather than what we really can't control. And that's what goes on within. That's what goes on within our hearts, within our consciousness, within our beings. So people often, when there's a crisis going on in the world or a personal crisis, but more like what's going on in the world, people will often be asking, like, what can I do to help the world? Like, should I, vlog, or should I demonstrate, or should I, do whatever? And really, it starts from within. So the best thing that I believe that we can all do is to work on ourselves and to work with our heart, work with our consciousness, to work with expanding our consciousness, to connecting more with spirit and awakening. And the idea is to become the awakening that you want to see in the world, become that first, and then you connect with spirit or source or the quantum field or whatever you want to call it, and whatever it is that you're meant to do on a more earthly tangible level, that's going to become known through your meditation and through your connection with spirit. So it really starts by just doing your spiritual work and doubling down with it. And we have a new season starting in a few minutes, a new beginning. This is a time to maybe just sort of recenter yourself, refocus yourself, and really set intention to what you wish to do in the spring season. What happens is well, obviously, what happens is that we go from the dark season to the light season. So starting today, there's going to be more hours of daylight in the northern hemisphere. For those that are watching from Australia and New Zealand, it's actually the opposite. So you're kind of going more into your internal hibernation period, where those of us in the northern hemisphere are sort of coming out into the light. So the idea really is to allow all that you've learned, like how have you grown the last 6 months with all that's been going on in the world, all that's been going on within. Because what happens out there affects what happens in here, and what happens in here affects what happens out there. There's no separation. Um, we're just in physical separate vehicles, but we're all part of the same collective consciousness. So what goes on within, affects what's going on outside, and vice versa. And we've all learned a lot. And what I'm seeing is that it's a process. This is the awakening. This is the great awakening. As I try to caution you, and early in the year and as well as 2021, it's not like this is going to just flip overnight. It's a process. We may be talking about years or even decades before the seeds of our awakening is really known in the world. So there's a lot of transformation. Everything's changing. The house of cards that the society has been built upon over the last however many years or however many decades, sooner or later was going to fall. And there's certain directives, there's certain narratives that's sort of bringing things into fruition and further what's the right word, programming our thinking and programming our perspective on things. So what we're seeing now is that, yeah, the perspective, or I should say the narrative, keeps changing. Like every so often it keeps changing. And all of a sudden there was a conflict in Ukraine. All of a sudden it was World War III, and then all of a sudden all the anxiety around COVID was like shifted somewhere else. And yeah, just a couple of examples how everything shifts and how the powers that be just really want to keep us unstable, unsteady, and in fear. Let me turn my sound off so you don't hear the pings. Um, and all they can keep everybody in that state of fear and that state of anger, which means that they're in a state of compliance, because a higher authority can step in and just kind of say, well, this is happening, but we have the answers, trust us or follow us. But meanwhile, they're kind of directing the whole flow of information and the whole flow of how the masses react to that. So, we had the virus, we had the freedom truckers. Some of the mandates started to change. That their voices were being heard, and people were starting to become more and more aligned and sympathetic with them. And then the Prime Minister of Canada, that just a couple months prior supported peaceful demonstrations, all of a sudden the Canadian government was starting to seize people's banks accounts that were donating money to the freedom fighters, or the freedom truckers, I guess they were called. So, this is just one of many examples of how we are subject to such hypocrisy, and how the narrative is going to keep changing. So recently there've been some studies around, going back to COVID, around natural immunity and how that plays into it. And basically there's studies or whatever, and of course the results of the studies were they were actually funded by Johnson and Johnson partially, which is interesting, especially given the findings that they found that basically just one dose of vaccine, and of course Johnson and Johnson is the one dose vaccine, right? But they were saying that one dose of a vaccine, if you've had COVID and you have natural immunity, is all that you need. The second, third, fourth dose, or the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, or 10th dose isn't going to make a difference with that. So just a couple of months ago, you could get your post on Facebook taken down just by claiming that natural immunity is as effective as vaccines. Now that won't happen. So I just wanted to point that out, just not to get caught up in the anxiety and the fear that they're trying to invoke in us, and stay in our power, stay in our truth, and everything, and not to believe the mainstream media, that they're a tool of control. Also understand that some of the conspiracy theory outlets, not going to name names or political leanings or anything like that, but I believe that a lot of this is set up in order to keep that division, to keep that fear, to keep that anger going. So we talk about World War III, but that's what the media is saying. We're not anywhere near right at this moment of anything related to World War III, at least on the surface. I mean, in terms of like cyber terrorism and forms of war, like modern warfare that doesn't take place on the battlefield. For all I know, it may be happening, just to put that out there. But it's really more of a narrative at this point. And yeah, and painting, Putin is like this. I don't know what it is. I mean, first and foremost, before I even talk about this is kind of, we have to put the disclaimers out there whenever we talk about these sensitive subjects in society, right? And so basically it's just really my opinions, and there's no condoning the actions of anybody that invades countries and kills people and so forth and so on. So just to make that clear. Now, we don't know what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. We see photos, we hear what the news is saying, we hear what people are saying, but we're not there and we don't know. So they paint Putin as this, terrible dictator that's, whatever. And, it may be true, but, and then there's other people with other belief systems that feel like maybe Putin's really kind of trying to save the world, from the evils of the West, or the evils of the deep state or whatever. Personally, where I'm sitting, I just see Putin as a player. I don't see him as the bad guy. I just see him as part of a bad system that's really trying to keep the control and keep the narrative going. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion on what I'm seeing, based on what's happening. Really, what's important is us right now, and what we're gonna do, how we're gonna, handle our own lives, how we're gonna adapt to changes, because no matter what, we need to adapt to the changes. We cannot hold on to what's been, um, and we can't even hold on to the word normal, because a lot of the programming is done through language and through subtleties of inflections of words and language and body language and all this stuff. Just assume that you're being attempted to be, brainwashed by society into a certain level of thinking and a certain level of reactionary thinking. So if you assume that, then you can look at the news with more of a discerning eye and pick out what's really fact versus what's an agenda to try to control you, and to lay on us certain agendas that tend to restrict more of our freedom, as the select few, continue to have the power and have the money and have what they want and everything like that. So I want to see quickly what you guys are saying before I get into this. We're all just players in the play. Yeah, I think Mel K does a job sharing her research. Thank you for that, Mel K. I'll remember that, because I'm looking for new sources. Thank you, Michael. Good morning, Carla. MSM is the virus. Yeah, I can't necessarily argue with that. It's a mind virus. People do not naturally understand about him. So, yeah, it's very complex. And again, I think the idea is we need to take care of ourselves, and and understand how the programming works. So, thing is, if you scare people, if you get them into survival mode, they become very compliant, because everybody wants to save their skin, they want to save their children, they want to save their families. Um, I'll tell you that when things are at their very worst, you see the very worst and the very best of human behavior, and the human spirit always prevails in the end, and that's going to happen again. So, they talk about, we want to do this, like, while we're distracted by everything that's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, and then the U.S. sanctioning, which I think is a bad move, but, a lot of people would disagree with that because of the obvious. But I think from a strategic, like, I'll put it this way: if your goal is world peace, and if you want everybody to get along and you want to compromise, you want to be diplomatic, sanctioning Russia, given the complex structure of the world, is a very bad move, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a political scientist, I'm not an expert. So, again, I admit that I may not be 100% accurate in my views of the world and what's going on in the world around me, but this is what I'm feeling. And um, and then, the next thing is, because there's this division of ideologies, whether you want to call it communism, socialism versus capitalism, or the free world. The lines have gotten very blurry, and that's been going on for a while. So what's supposed to be more of a capitalistic society has elements of socialism in it. And then in Russia, the Burger Kings, by the way, are not pulling out of Russia, which I found that interesting. But you see a certain amount of westernization in the communist countries, a certain amount of socialist agendas in the so-called free world. So that's just the point that I'm trying to make. So again, yeah, watch the language, watch how things are being presented, and it's that fear agenda. It's like behind the scenes when all this was going on. Yeah, they're figuring out how to do vaccine passports. What that's going to look like. Is that going to be on this big database? Everything's being more digitalized. Artificial intelligence is gaining more and more control. Like we're seeing these changes, but we're distracted by another agenda. So it's happening, and we're not necessarily aware of it. And all this stuff is going to be like, and I forgot who was talking, who said this, but they were sort of justifying this whole thing about having all of our personal data more digitalized and more available for scrutiny, and the vaccine passports and all that, in the way of establishing a new normal. And I think last Sunday I touched on this as well, or in a recent live stream. And what is the world? Words invoke emotions. It's programming. So certain words give us a certain feeling or certain emotional reaction to it, and that affects our energy, that affects our behavior, that affects what we create in our life. So when we hear the word normal, it's like, I can relax now, because our subconscious minds that are geared towards survival, and our egos that are part of our survival instinct, like normal. When things are normal, there's not a threat. So when we hear the word normal, we relax. It's like, oh, thank God, they're giving us our normal back. Let's do what they say. Who cares about our rights and freedoms? They know what's best for us. We're getting our normal back. So just keep an eye on that. The idea is to not to understand the nature of the programming, not from a fear-based perspective, but from an empowerment perspective, so that you don't fall victim to it. We want to program our own minds. We want to program ourselves. We do not want them to program us. So that's my little wrap for the morning. Like I said, I'm fine. As long as everybody's played. If you disagree with me, fine. That's where positive conversations come in. That's when we exchange ideas. That's how we learn and grow. So yeah, I agree. But everybody's agreeing with Michael. I want to see what they're agreeing with. The popular theory is that Putin, I guess that is taking out key deep state holding. I understand that, and I'm not going to go, because it's such a controversial issue. I don't want to dive too deep into that, but there's supporting evidence to what you're saying. I'll just leave it at that, Michael. There's supporting evidence, and there's things that are going on in Ukraine. Again, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy is a little bit blurry in this situation, in my opinion. Um, and I actually had somebody who was a client around 2016, when the Russians were accused of the voter tampering or whatever. And the person was saying, and this is in 2016, is like in confidence, they're watching Ukraine more than Russia. This was in 2016, and I was like, huh? What do you mean? And it's like, yeah, a lot of what they're saying about Russia with the like the cyber attacks, it's really that they're tracing to the Ukraine. And this is somebody that had some ties in. I mean, he wouldn't elaborate because, again, there's security clearances. But this is, I don't know. I haven't spoken to him for about four or 5 years, but it was interesting. I'll put it that way. So the lines are a little bit blurry, and there's some evidence on Google Earth about some of the sites that were bombed in the Ukraine and what was going on there. That was not necessarily what the news told you was going on. So I think, for what Michael was saying, I think that there's enough supporting evidence that we should keep an open mind about it. and some investigation should be done into what's really happening. Now, because there's an agenda, because there's certain things they want to happen in the world, in order for, again, it really comes down to follow the money and follow the power, right? Same as it ever was, to quote the great David Byrne. uh and things are never going to change until we change, and it starts from within. So let me leave it at that, because I want to save some time today to actually do some tarot. So I know this is, because what's going on in the world, this is all part of it, but because it's the first day of spring and starting in just a few minutes, I want to find the Empress card in the tarot. And I want to talk a little bit about that card, because to me, this card really speaks spring. Now let's see if I can find it. Yeah. The only thing about going through 78 cards, like, my only concern about that is that I'm not that young anymore. um, anyways, here we go. This is the Empress. I mean, I don't know, in this deck, if she, yeah, I mean, just that she's bright, she's yellow, and it's actually the powers of Venus, but through the numerology of 3, or key 3, there's also a Jupiterian element. So, so she's key 3. 3 is about expansion, about growth, and things like that. Jupiterian energy. And what happens in the spring is like things start to grow again, things start to warm up, and the Empress is very nurturing. She's the mother, the archetypical mother vibration. You're nurturing, healing, expansion, abundance, love. Love is often in the air in the springtime. So so I like to do a little tutorial on the tarot, just as a fun little thing. So I've never really talked about the Empress card. So if you meditate on this card, or if you get this in the spread, you're probably being asked to look into the more nurturing side of your situation, more into like the mother vibration. Maybe that it's about giving birth to an idea or a situation like that. Um, but I feel like to embrace the spring. So I'm just gonna ask Spirit, do we want to use this as the meditation? No, I feel like they want me to pull a different card for a meditation card. Well, you can use the Empress to meditate with also, but I'm gonna pull a different card as well. And again, for anybody who's new today, the meditation card, the way I say to do this is always get present before you meditate. Clear your mind of thoughts, clear your body of any tensions, any worries, any stresses. Get nice and relaxed, and visualize the card in your mind. In your mind, step into the card and feel the energy of the card and see the whole panoramic view, since the tarot card is only just a doorway to a whole scene. So once you step into the card, you can see everything that you can't just see in the card, basically. And then just hang out and feel the energy, get messages. If there's any people or beings or spirit guides there, talk to them, get messages, ask questions, see what answers come. Whenever you're in meditation, as long as you're not in your thinking mind, and you ask a question, just make yourself get the answer immediately. Don't be like, and nothing's coming. Just really set the intention, and by doing that, it may seem like you're just making it up, but you're not in your thinking mind, so you can't make it up. You're really just telling Spirit, give me the information right now, and then make yourself get it. So that's how that works. And in my mind, I'm seeing, I don't know if it's the Judgment card or the Temperance card, but I'm seeing one of those big angels. I think it's Archangel Raphael. So this would be about, this is a good week to reset and to heal, because I'm starting to get images now. And Archangel Raphael is on the Temperance card in the tarot also, which is really about you're finding more moderation, not you're finding a little bit more emotional balance and stuff like that. So the card that I pulled actually is interesting, and this is the Seven of Wands in the tarot, and the image is the person, being in a position of advantage when it comes to the challenges in their life. So this is maybe a message for us also, that to understand that even if we're faced with all these challenges, it's like bad news, or your BFF blocked you on Facebook because you don't have the same political views as him or her, or whatever. Like these can represent things that are being challenging, or challenges that are being imposed upon you, but you're fending them off, and you're above them. See, the figure is above them, and they're coming from below. So this is saying that you're above the challenges, that you can stay above things, head above water, and all that stuff. And that's sort of the energy and the message of the card. So again, the way to do this, just relax your mind, step into the card, and because of the nature of the card, when you step in your meditation, it's like you can ask, what are some insights about what challenges I face in my life, and what challenges do the world face, and how can I overcome these challenges, or how can I stay above the challenges? So you can go into this particular card and ask those types of questions. So next on the agenda, we're going to do a 3-card spread for the week. Now, Sharita is going to be on Monday, doing her spring forecast based on numerology and astrology. She's a true expert in her fields of expertise. Tonight, if anybody wants to come back and maybe get messages from the other side, I'm doing my seasonal mediumship free, of course, because it's on YouTube. So from 7 to 8, I'm going to be on, and I'm just going to give messages. I'll also give away a couple of free private sessions with me also. So I do this 8 times a year, on the honoring the Celtic Sabbaths, the wheel of the year. So we're Mabon, or Spring Equinox in the or is it Esther? I think it's called Esther also, where we get Easter from. But in any regards, we're this is a Celtic holiday today also. So mediumship at 7, it's free. Tell your friends, let's have a party, and I'll just get messages and see where they go. Either Tuesday or Wednesday, we're gonna do another live meditation, another heart brain coherence meditation, and send love out into the collective, and into those, try to give some energetic support to people that are being displaced by the wars, fighting the wars, as well as the powers that be that are orchestrating things. Let's send them some love also, and the less we hate, and the more that we can just I don't know if accept is the right word, but I can't think of a better word. But the idea is you send positive energy to those forces that are imposing so much negativity, that can help to soften it or to make a difference. I mean, a lot of people are doing this, so we're doing our part. But anyway, the idea really is for us to be okay, and by doing this work, we can share love and share some good positive energy with collective consciousness, to help everybody get through this time, and to get to the next phase of their awakening and stuff like that. So I have to look in my calendar to see which evening we've got. I'm leaning towards Wednesday, but we'll see about that. Let me keep this here. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Goodness, okay. All right, so so the energy's not terrible or anything with this. So let me just kind of vibe on this for a second. That's 11:34. So I think we're right in the moment of the equinox now. We're really close to it. Try to get a feeling for this. So I think it's just kind of like business as usual. My sense about the spring and the rest of the year is yeah, I do feel like there's going to be some, I don't know, backing off of aggression soon. There may be some talks or whatever, but I don't think anything is ending, um, or anything like that. So I think that it's just going to kind of take on one form, then another. But this Knight of Cups is really, I mean, to me, and that's kind of the outcome. I mean, it's sort of like Knights are movement, and Cups are about love and positive emotions. So I kind of feel like it's just sort of saying there are people that are likely to kind of step forward and really try to provide a lot of aid and a lot of assistance for people. And yeah, it just seems like there's just a lot of discouraging news that continues, stuff like that. I feel like there's another. I think it's already happening, but I get the sense also like of more of surges of coronavirus or some new worries about that, or some new news about that as well. Now, looking at this from as our reading, not necessarily what's going on in the world, but what's happening with us. I mean, this is telling me that we really need, and this may be me also as well, because I'm feeling this personally. We just need to kind of do something to recharge our energies. It just kind of giving me a sense of depletion. It's like feeling like these cups are reversed. It's almost like our life force sort of draining out of us as we just kind of get fed more and more bad news, more and more fear-based news, all of that stuff. And yeah, the Nine of Wands, when it's upright, is a nice card because it shows the sense of psychic wounding. That's what the bandage, if you can see the bandage around the head, is about. That's but upright, it's like being able to still meet the challenges. But has kind of like an overwhelming feeling, and I feel like what they're saying here is, what Spirit's trying to tell us is, let's talk to one another. Let's help to uplift each other. Let's continue to build this community, and or build your own communities, or whatever it is, and really to approach this from a standpoint of love. So I just feel like they're saying, that we're just getting really kind of bombarded by a lot of energetic negativity, as well as the media, and as well as the events in the world. Just people start to feel hopeless, and there's a lot of worry about money. So that's the other thing of the House of Cards falling, is that all the financial systems are breaking down and are going to need to really be updated or upgraded. And of course, they're going to try to do that digitally and try to do that in the way that they want to do it, so they can have more control. So, this is all about taking our power back. So it looks to me like a lot of us are feeling, drained. A lot of us are kind of feeling, a little bit hopeless, even, I want to say. Um, but at the same time, that really focus on, the cups are about the heart. They're about love. It's about water and emotions, and really keep doing heart brain coherence. These are things I cannot stress enough. That, and practicing presence, being in the moment, in every moment, being present right now. And then in that present moment, infuse it with love, so you can hold magnified gratitude in your heart and really hold it and sit with it. That's what heart brain coherence is. That's what the practice is: gratitude, appreciation, compassion, and love, and holding these very high frequencies in the heart. And I do this daily. I always practice what I preach. So anything that I tell you guys are things that I do myself. And excuse me, some days I'm very, very busy. Ideally, I try to do it 3 times a day for 10 or 11 minutes. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 times if I have like a full schedule. But it's also the times in between. It's not just doing heart brain coherence. It's like every time you think about it, get present and feel compassion in your heart. So really what you do between your meditations is what makes the difference. It's like somebody can can get up at 3 a.m., do their morning sadhanas, meditate for 2 hours, and be in this space, and then all day long they're a miserable asshole. And it's like, that's not spirituality. So what if you meditate, if you can't take those higher vibrations out into the world with you, if you can't apply it to your life and to help other people in your life also, then it's not really a spiritual practice anymore. It's just going through motions, and it's more of an egoic practice to kind of convince yourself, see how spiritual I am. I get up early in the morning, I meditate or whatever. Who cares if I'm a miserable asshole the rest of the day? I'm spiritual and I'm better than you. So anyway, so again, so what I was saying is, when I do this, as soon as I go into that gratitude, my head buzzes. It's like my ears start to ring off the hook. I feel rushes in my brain. And and that is going into a high frequency brainwave pattern known as gamma when you start to experience that. I think, again, not my expertise. I'm not a brain specialist. I'm not an endocrinologist, but this is what happens to me, and I believe it's the starting of entering the gamma state, and or whatever it is, whatever label you want to put it. What happens is that, and that's what heart brain coherence does. When you bring the heart into coherence, that's a vibrational rhythm, not the heartbeat being regular, but the vibrational rhythm of the heart being coherent, and through gratitude, appreciation, and love, then your brain becomes coherent also, and your brain waves elevate. I mean, you could go, some people will go more into an alpha or a theta state, but the point being is that you come into a coherent brainwave pattern where stress and anxiety take you into a very incoherent pattern. And then you can't have a clear thought. You cannot access spirit that way. So we have to learn how to be warriors. In other words, being faced with stress, but not compromising our ability to be clear of mind. And it starts by being clear of heart. So do your heart work, do your heart brain coherence or an equivalent practice. Then that activates your brain. And then you match the frequency of God or spirit or the quantum field, because we receive, that's why we feel gratitude, the universe gives. So when we feel the gratitude of receiving, we match the frequency of the giver. That's just how vibration and energy works. So if you do this practice, you start to connect with the universe. And when you start to connect with the universe, you connect with your own spirit, your own higher power, your power source. And then you you can start to make significant upgrades in your own life, and you can start to gain more understanding, and you start to understand what your life purpose is. You start to accept that you're here because you chose to be here at this time, not because you have to be. And you start to understand what your life mission is more. So that's the message I get from that for us. I want to see what the Native American cards are saying and what you guys are saying quickly as I'm doing that. Like, yeah. Oh boy, I wish it's hard to say. A mint that actually works for the people. That's a good point. Yeah, works for the people. Who's the government really working for? The people or themselves? And just see what's going on. And I think there's a pretty clear answer to that question. Of course, I have no opinions on it. I'm just here on YouTube doing a live stream. But that said, I think once you open your heart and your mind and you get out of your programming, it's pretty clear what's going on here. The war is a good example. It's like war is big business. A lot of people profit. A lot of agendas get solved. If you ask, the average Russian citizen, they don't want war. The Ukrainian doesn't want war. The average American doesn't want war. Um, but this is what the governments are imposing. So are the governments working for themselves or working for the people? Now we got the matriarch of blades. That's like the queen of swords in the tarot. Shrewdness. This is about using our cunning. And I feel like the message here is you have to be clever. Don't be in reaction mode. There's a who was it? Mel Robbins, I think. Somebody, one of the spiritual psychologists on YouTube. Although it wasn't her original concept, but she talks about the 5-second rule, and or somebody else talked about the 17-second rule. But whatever it is, when you see something that you don't like and you go into a reaction, like if I get like a nasty negative comment on YouTube, for example, like my first reaction is like like, oh my god, it's like, oh, I'm gonna beat you up. By the way, that's our survival instinct. So I first experienced sort of this rush of energy, this rush of adrenaline and cortisol, my heart beating faster. Now, if I was to just respond, it's not like I'd be responding from a high spiritual place. I'd be responding as a reaction. Now, I love ice hockey. I'll admit that. That's kind of like it's sort of a combination of zen and brutality. So I'm going to use an example because if you watch hockey, they're hitting each other with sticks. They're always like bending the rules of the game. But when a penalty gets called, it's often not the instigator, but the person that reacted. So in other words, like I noticed that somebody could slash another player and then the other player comes and cross checks the person. It's the person that did the cross check that gets the penalty, not the person that did the original slashing. It's the reaction. So the 5-second rule is you just sit with your feelings, just breathe. It's like, okay, so somebody has a different opinion than me. Who cares? So somebody's negative on YouTube who I'm never going to meet in my entire life. Who the heck cares about that? So you sit with that for a few seconds and then you can respond from your heart and your spirit and from love, not from reaction, because it's a survival instinct. It's kind of like in our subconscious, that negative comment became a threat to our life in some way or another. And not really, but that's how the mind interprets it, and that's why we feel anxiety. That's yeah the hormones preparing us for possible fight or flight. So we want to do is just breathe and sit through that. So you want to do that in life, especially now. It's fine to have reactions. You're human. Not to try to suppress your reactions, but rather be present in your reactions. And by doing that, then you can start to reconnect to spirit and source. And then you're not affected by other person's energy, because at the end of the day, they're feeling fear and anxiety also, and they're imposing that on you. So I believe that's the message that this card's trying to give us at this time. So moving right along. I have my um, animal spirit guide animal deck with me, and let's see what wisdom the animals can give us today. Okay, the one I want no, this one. Okay, Wolverine. Okay, is a Wolverine a wolf? Wait a second. You are a lot tougher than you think you are. Ooh, I like that message. I think that should be our mantra for the week. I am a lot tougher than I think I am. Or actually, let me reframe that a little bit. Um, I I know that I am tough and resilient. um, so the idea is we want. It's not that we don't think that we're tough. We have to own that we're tough. We need to be tough in this world. In order to be at peace in the world that we live in, we need to be warriors also. Warriors are about peace, about truth, about impeccability. And if you're trained to be a warrior, then you don't allow your reactions to affect you, the way it does if you're more of a victim mentality. So, when you're being called to battle, again, going back to what I was saying about heart brain coherence, the natural tendency to go into the survival mode and to be overwhelmed by our hormones and literally not be able to function and get killed. So, when you become a warrior, you learn how to be able to stay in your spirit, to stay in your center, even when you're faced with those survival emotions coming up and those hormones firing. The natural tendency is our brains become very incoherent, and we're very hyper vigilant in our bodies and what's happening around us, but we're cut off from spirit or a higher self, which is our source of strategy, of cunning, of planning, which you need when you're in battle. So the art of the warrior is to be able to stay in your presence, to stay in your power. When there's a threat, so you can draw on spirit, you can draw on your higher self and overcome what the challenge is. So you are tougher than you think you are, but I know you guys know that you're tough, so you can kind of paraphrase that the way that it works with you. Just remind yourself that you are tough, you are strong, and you're going to get through this. Not only are you going to get through this, you're going to thrive through this. um, no matter what happened. I always use this example. There was a Great Depression back in the 1930s. Everybody was losing their houses, their jobs, not enough to eat or whatever. But meanwhile, there was these brothers in California selling wine on a roadside and wound up making $1 million during the Depression. They were known as the Gallo brothers. So the, we need our cunning. We need our connection to spirit and source. No matter what happens with the economy, there's always a way to make money. Everybody has a $1 million, multi-million dollar idea in their head because it's out in the ethers. And the idea is not to exploit and to make money at the expense of others, but rather to understand what's going on in the world and to be in your power, and to be able to access information in order to use again your cunning, your wits, and to be able to turn a very difficult situation into something that's livable or manageable, or even advantageous for yourself. Oh, let me do the angel cards before I sign off. Again, if you're free at 7 and you want to sit in and perhaps get a message from somebody that you love that's crossed over, we're doing free mediumship here at 7 tonight. Tomorrow at 7, Sharita Starr will be sharing her gifts of insight into astrology and numerology and how things are adding up for the spring months. And you know, never to be fear based, but be realistic. It ain't pretty, but you're pretty. So that's the thing, is you want that big heart of yours to glow and expand and to be infectious, and to help uplift other people, and to do our part to raise the collective. The world is changing. It has to change. Be in your power and do not fear. So, this is the second week in a row, I think, that patience came up. So, not planned, either the second in the row or second out of the last 3 weeks. So the message is, now's the time to learn, study, and gather information. Enjoy being a student, because in the future you will synthesize your knowledge into action. Be still, be in your heart, be in your presence. Don't judge. Just be. That to me, that feels like that's the message. We're coming to the late season. It's more of an action time, just based on the wheel of the year. The energies that's been in the earth for the last several months is starting to come up through the trees and the plants. So things that are internal are starting to externalize in nature, and that's going to happen in our lives also. So what we want is what's internal to be as pure and as peaceful as possible. So work with the heart, hold compassion, gratitude, and love in the heart. That's my best thing that I can say to you guys today. And on that note, I'm thinking of my lane. Cool. So stop in. It's at 7. I mean, I can't control who comes through, obviously, and it's when I do this, a lot of people are like, "What about my mother? What about this person?" And I'll explain that at 7 how that works. How a message for one person can wind up being a message for a half dozen people, or the whole group, for that matter. All right. You're welcome, Susan. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sharita. Thank you, and love to you always. And yes, the truth may hurt, but the love will always evolve. Yes, words to live and grow by. Thank you, Sharita. I love you all. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.